was actually at Anime Expo when this game was released, and it's kind of funny that I kept seeing advertisements of the game all over the place, and I'm here being like, me being here is the reason why I'm not playing Zenless Zone Zero right now. And unfortunately, when I got back from my trip, it was kind of low on my priority list, being behind like the First Descendant and Once Human, as they were also released around at the same time. Now that I actually got to play Zenless Zone Zero, I think the name is actually perfect. The acronym ZZZ accurately portrays my experience with the game, as it was pretty much a sleeper. It wasn't all bad, but when compared to other gacha games on the market, it just didn't do enough for me. So how exactly was Zenless Zone Zero not good enough? I think the story is actually decent. It's somewhat easy to follow along, and there's a good mix of different ways of storytelling. There are cinematics, comic book-like sections, and like a Tales-like skit dialogue, and just normal dialogue itself. And the content of the story itself is pretty easy to follow along, and it's interesting enough for me to want to know more about it. The problem is that the balance between storytelling and actual gameplay is horrendous. I'm sitting there watching the cinematic, comic, dialogue, or whatnot for a while, then put into like a quick 30-second battle sequence, then back into like another string of storytelling. The way it is right now, I feel like it's better put as like an animated show rather than a game. Again, the actual content and the different ways of the story being presented was good, but there was too little gameplay to equally complement the story. The characters in Zenless Zero are alright. Again, this is only based off of like the 1.0 launch version, so it's up to Xu Yuan right now, and the different character types / race are kind of all over the place in my opinion. There's like a bear, a wolf, a demon, a shark, and a few too many very young girls. The standouts in my opinion are Xu Yuan, Grace, and Nicole for no particular reason. And I think it's in the same boat as with something like Wuthering Waves in terms of quality of the base roster. But I think Wuthering Waves, like recent new characters, have been pretty good from what I saw. Aside from like a couple of standouts, there's just a drop off in the appeal of characters due to just how uninspiring they look, or their questionable age, or just not cool dudes. Just going off of like Hoyo versus like record of both Genshin and Star Rail, I'm not too worried about a mediocre base roster, as they usually come up with like some great designs for future characters, especially for like big content updates. But I'm worried with so many gacha games in the market currently, I don't know if enough people will stay invested in Zenless Zone Zero for those content updates. I think the best thing about Zenless Zone Zero is the theming and the world design. It feels somewhat retro, and there's an emphasis on TVs and modders. You basically run a DVD store as a cover for your kind of illegal job in guiding people through a dangerous place called the Hollow. The way the game presents itself during missions is through like a game board of TVs. I'll get into this much later. And even when you try to pull for characters, there are more TVs. It never felt too much, as it felt creative in the way that they put in all these TVs everywhere. And the world itself is very cool, as it is clearly inspired by Persona 5. You can walk down the street to grab a cup of coffee or a bowl of ramen. You can go across the street, play some like arcade games. You can walk around, accept some side quests, even solve a few puzzles. There's even a day and night cycle as well. I'm just still a bit unsure how you progress through the phases, but it's there. It's just really nice, and there are a lot of detail put into this. The problem is that there are zones that you have to fast travel to. The menu itself to fast travel doesn't feel intuitive and lacks the cohesiveness that you should feel when traveling between areas. And the other zones are also very small in comparison to the main area. If they combine these like smaller areas into a bigger zone and make it to where you can travel to these areas by walking from the main area instead of like opening like a separate menu to do so, it would add much more cohesiveness into the world. And they just need to add like a visual map rather than like videotapes or whatever it's called. But look, I get it, it's for the retro theme, but it just doesn't feel right, and it makes the whole world very disjointed. Combat is horrible. It's very boring. You essentially just press one button and you win. I toggled my settings to challenge mode, so I think it just makes the challenge in general harder. Not sure how, but it just is. The problem is, it did not feel like a challenge at all. I don't think I had a character reach below 50% HP, And now, does that mean I'm a really good gamer? Not sure, but if I never felt challenged or threatened on challenge mode, then what's challenge mode there even for? The combat mechanics is similar to Wuthering Waves. You can bring up to 3 characters in your lineup, and you can freely swap between them anytime during combat. When certain conditions are met, you have like a special like swap in attack and animation. Each character has a basic attack, a skill attack, and you can only use skill attacks for a particular character when they reach a threshold on their special attack bar that can be filled by just flat out attacking. Each character even has an ultimate ability that doesn't feel anything spectacular or crazy, at least with the characters I have so far. Each character slots into the role of stun, attack, or support, but I never really understood or felt the effects of the difference of these roles. When I compare this to Wuthering Waves, which has a lot of simulators in gameplay, in Wuthering Waves, I know and I can see the differences of each character's role, such as Baisha's healing or Calchero's just raw damage output. In Zenless Zero, Nicole may be a support, but I'm not entirely sure visually and statistically how she supports her team. Another thing I did not like is the dumb TV game board. I mean, I guess at a glance it looks kind of cool, but the actual function of it is so bad. Very simple, and it just feels like it was lazily done. I look at other games like Genshin Impact and Star Rail, and those feel like they spend a lot of time creating this interesting world that you can interact with. The story wants you to find Sparkling Penacony. You literally have to walk around the theme park, maybe fight some monsters, maybe open some chests, but you are still there in Penacony playing as your favorite character like, I don't know, Kafka or Blade or whatever. You can't do that in Zenless Zero. I don't think you could even just casually walk outside of your like video store as one of your characters you unlocked. It just feels like a massive oversight, and it's just horrible that the Hollow, the dangerous entity thing place or whatever it is only represented through TV screens. Then there's the storytelling and puzzles in this like awkward game board, and it's just I just don't know who thought this was a good idea. I can't be the only one that thinks this, but I think there's just a general gacha fatigue, at least for me. I've played like Fire Emblem Heroes, Genshin Impact, Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and now Zenless Zero. I know other people have played a lot of other gacha games, and to think that there are still more gacha games coming out soon, such as like NTE, which is basically Grand Theft Auto but anime, and Project Mugen, which is basically anime Spider-Man. There's no way a single person has the time and money to invest into all of these at the same time, as in the nature of gacha. You either spend a lot of money and play little, or you play a lot and spend a little, or somewhere in between. Look, I love Fire Emblem. I want to keep playing its gacha counterpart, but I also really like Star Rail and maybe Project Mugen when it comes out. And so when a new contender, something like Zenless Zero, tries to compete in this space, it needs like a big X factor to get players to get invested from the start. And I'm not just getting that from Zenless Zero. I honestly just think that if it wasn't a gacha game, my whole perspective on this game would be different, because I wouldn't be comparing this to like an already established gacha such as like Wuthering Waves or Star Rail. Because I don't see this as an individual game, I see this as, will I stop playing Star Rail to play this game? But hey, if you're making tons of money, then who really cares about my opinion on it? But it's a shame seeing great games like Star Rail be tattered simply by the label of gacha. As a standalone title, I think Zenless Zero is alright. The visuals and the retro theming is very cool and very appealing. Reminds me heavily of Persona 5, and that's a game that almost everyone who played it can appreciate very heavily. Well, that comes with high expectations. The combat is very simple and very bland. You can literally close your eyes and spam one button, and there's a good chance that you'll win that fight. Within during like these so-called dungeon sections, it feels very uninspiring and doesn't help flesh out the Hollow in any way. In fact, there are many features of the game that feels very disconnected. The transition between combat to the TV game board and back to the game board itself doesn't feel like it's well represented the activities and dangers of the Hollow. When traveling to places outside of these dungeons, it looks really pretty, but they feel very small, and being forced to open a menu to fast travel to different areas of the world magnifies the lack of cohesiveness in the world. It's really a shame because some of the characters are really cool and the overall story is actually pretty interesting. but the way it was presented and the imbalance of story and actual gameplay makes it feel like an animated show rather than a game. And unless they change and fix things quickly, I'll stick with playing Star Rail and eagerly wait for Neverness to Everness or Project Mugen to release. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video if you like this type of content, and if you have any suggestions for any game that you want me to play, you can leave a comment down below or come join the Discord in the link below that I'm active in. See you guys later.